Hello and welcome to Lesson 9 of Coding with Sahana. First, we will complete last week's challenge of the week. Next, we will learn about lists, loops, and strings. Then, we will do a practice problem on programmers. Finally, I will introduce this week's challenge of the week. Now let's solve last week's challenge of the week. So the challenge of the week was to create a program that allows the user to guess for your birth month. Notify the user when they guess correctly. The hints were, first, create two variables representing the correct month in uppercase and lowercase. So let's do that first. So I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to set it equal to month. I'm going to call it month 1. And I'm going to set it equal to September. And I'm going to create another variable representing the lowercase. So September in all lowercase letters. Now let's look at the next hint. Use a while loop to repeatedly ask for the user for their guess while the guess is not correct. So let's first use an input function to gather the user's guess, and then we could move on to our while loop. So I'm going to create another variable that I'm going to set equal to guess. I'm going to set it equal to the input of guess the month I was born in. Okay, and I'm just going to put a comment statement so I remember. This is going to be the initial guess. And these are going to be the correct answers. Okay, now let's create our while loop. So I'm going to say while guess 1 is not equal to month 1 and guess 2 is not equal to while guess 1 is not equal to month 1 and guess is not equal to month 2, ask for the input of guess again. They have to try again. Okay. Now the last part or the last hint is to print out the user guess correctly when the condition is met. So outside of the for loop, outside of the while loop, I'm just going to press print break so that we have a space in between. And I will have it print. You got it. So this will be printed out after lines 10 and 11 are completed. So after the guess is equal to the uppercase version or the guess is equal to the lowercase version. So this is printed when guess is correct. Okay, now let's run our code to check. So when I run my code in the shell, I get guess the month I was born in. So I'm going to purposefully put in a different month that doesn't match month 1 and month 2 just to check to make sure my code is working. So I'll put April, and it asks me to try again. Let's try March. And it's keep on asking me to try again until I get September. You got it. Or if I were to run again, let me try out with the uppercase version. September. We still got it. This is one way to complete the challenge of the week, but like most of our problems, There are many ways that you can do this in a shorter or longer version, but as long as you use the while loop, you should be good to go. Now let's pick off from last week's topic. In programming, we know the process of repeating some aspect of a program several times is called looping. We have already learned about while. Now let's explore for loops. The for loop is used for when you want to repeat some aspect of a program for a predetermined number of cycles. In order to determine the number of times that the loop will repeat, we will need something that is countable, such as strings or lists. Let's see what is going on here in this example. The word for initiates a loop that will run one time for each character in the string happy, so a total of 5 cycles for HAPPY. The variable item temporarily holds the character in the string as the loop is counting through the string. The word in tells Python which countable item is going to be used to determine the number of repetition. The colon indicates there will be a block of commands to be executed together. The block of commands will contain one or more lines of code that will be executed one time for each cycle through the loop. Remember, in this case, the birthday is not indented, so it is not in the loop, and it only prints once after the loop is completed. In this image, I've added the following 3 lines of code on lines 9, 10, and 11. Notice the loop still ran for 5 cycles, and n is still held as the character in the string during each loop. We just didn't do anything with the temporary variable during the cycles. Now let's do a quick review about lists. A list allows us to group together a variety of items into one place, which can even be assigned a variable name to be referred to throughout the program. Note that lists are grouped together with brackets and use commas to separate them. Since lists are countable like strings, they can be used in for loops as well. Now let's add the following lines of code to our happy birthday example. Notice in the first for loop we added, since there are 5 items in the list, happy is displayed 5 times. Birthday is only printed 1 time because it is outside of our for loop. In the second loop we added, since instead of printing a string, we have to print out the counter variable item, each item in the list is printed out until the list is done. Remember, the variables n, x, letter, and item temporarily hold the value of the letter being counted in the string and the item being counted in the list, and can be used throughout the loop. Now let's do a practice problem with loops, lists, and strings. Now let's do a practice problem with what we have learned about for loops, strings, and lists. So this assignment is called FizzBuzz, and it's replicated, and it has been replicated many, many times in different types of assignments. But in this one, we are going to classify the word fizz as a multiple of 2 and buzz as a multiple of 3. And then we're going to have the user enter in a positive integer, and we will have to use a for loop to print out each number leading up to the positive integer, whether it is a fizz buzz, or neither. So to do so, I'm going to first print out my declaration statement, just saying what I said now. So fizz is a multiple of 2, and buzz is a multiple of 3. So that will be, I'm just going to put a comment statement. I'm going to call it background info. Okay, now let's receive a number from the user. So I'm going to call it num, and it'll be the input of enter a positive integer, \n. Now, since we are going to have to do calculations with our number num, I'm just going to put an integer function around this input so that my string input becomes an integer. Now I'm just going to put a print break so that we have some space. And now we can start with our for loop. So I'm just going to say for n in the range. So remember our range function, I'm going to use the second syntax where I would have my start number, and then my n number will always be 1 less than the number I put in the second slot. So I will put num, which is the positive integer, plus 1, so that it prints out all the way until my integer. So now we can do colon, and we can do if statements within our for statement. So we know based on which value of n will be a fizz, buzz, or fizz buzz. So now we could say if a number is a fizz buzz, then it will be a multiple of both 2 and 3. We can also restate that as a multiple of 6. So I can say if n modulus 6 is equal to 0, then print that n is a fizz buzz. I'm going to rule out my fizz buzz case first because if a number is both a multiple of 2 and 3, then we will have to get that checked out. Or else it will always print out fizz, and it will disqualify the remaining conditions because of the order it appears in. So we will always do, in general, when we have two merging conditions, it is better to do the merged condition first, and then we can do our individual conditions after. So if n modulus 6, so if the remainder of n divided by 6 is 0, then that means it's a multiple of 6. So fizz buzz should be printed out. Now let's do our second condition. So elif, if it's not a modulo of 6, elif, if n modulo 2 is equal to 0, so if it is a multiple of 2, then we can just print out, print n is a fizz. So it means that if n divided by 2 has a remainder of 0, then it's a multiple of 2, and therefore that number is fizz. Now we can go to our next condition. So if n modulo 3 is 0, so if the remainder of n divided by 3 is 0, so if it's a multiple of 0, then we want to print that n is a buzz. And our final condition will be if it is neither a multiple of 6, 2, or 3. So I can put else since it's my last condition. Print n. So it will just print out the value of n if it is neither a multiple of 6, 2, or 3. Remember, the value of n will be depending on which number it is when counting between 1 and our number. So that changes every time the for loop is ran. Now let's run our code to make sure everything is working properly. So I'm going to run. It gave me my declarative statement. Fizz is a multiple of 2 and buzz is a multiple of 3. Enter a positive integer. I will enter in the number 10. And now it prints out 1. So 1 stays the same because it is neither a multiple of 6, 2, or 3. 2 is fizz because it's a multiple of only 2. 3 is a buzz, it's a multiple of only 3. 4 is a fizz. 5 is neither. 6 is fizz buzz because it's a multiple of 6. 6 divided by 6 has a remainder of 0. 7 is neither. 8 is a fizz, 9 is a buzz, and 10 is a fizz. Now let me introduce this week's challenge of the week. So this week's challenge of the week will be based on what we have learned, including strings, loops, and lists. So the assignment is to create a program that finds the sum of 30 numbers that increment by 4. Your starting number should be 33. So this will be printed out as each number when you find the sum, and it will increase until you get to the final sum. And the final sum will be printed out in a clean print statement. One hint I will give you is to create an initial value for the sum and change its value in each iteration of the for loop when you iterate through each number to find the sum. Good luck! Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and click on the bell icon for notifications on my next video.